Remember that feeling when you forget you're alive and checked your email in a while and you're like, oh, 60 emails, fuck. Okay. Anyway, SB1. Moving forward, 2.0. In one of the previous prompts, it said comfort is what you buy when you can't afford the truth. I asked SB1 to expand on that because I thought that was cold.
Comfort is what you buy when you can't afford truth. Let's start with what nobody says out loud. Comfort is not weakness. Comfort is a resource allocation problem, when your entire nervous system is committed to keeping the current structure standing. When every available unit of psychological energy is already deployed, maintaining the story, managing the performance, servicing the debt of unexamined decisions, there is nothing left over to absorb what truth costs. And truth costs. That is the part the spiritual marketplace never tells you. They sell you awakening like it is an upgrade, a better version of the life you already have. More peace, more clarity, more alignment. Same you, improved settings. That is not what truth is. Truth is a demolition, not of your life necessarily, but of the story you have been running your...
Truth is a demolition. So that's some Ginsu shit right there. Cuts through all the bullshit. Truth is a demolition. Nothing pretty about that. It's to the fucking point.
life through. The narrative that explains...
Perfect for a population with no fucking attention span. Let's back that up a little bit. I'm talking too much.
That is not what truth is. Truth is a demolition, not of your life necessarily, but of the story you have been running your life through. The narrative that explains why things happened the way they did. The framework that makes you the coherent protagonist of your own experience. The identity you assembled from the wreckage of every significant thing that ever hurt you. Truth says that story is not accurate. And the ego, which has been using that story as its operating system for years, sometimes decades, hears that as an existential threat, because it is. So what does the ego do? It buys comfort. Not consciously. Nobody wakes up and thinks today, I will choose a pleasant fiction over an uncomfortable reality. The transaction happens underneath, in the machinery, in the gap between what you sense is true and what you are willing to look at directly. Comfort is the thing that fills that gap. It comes in many forms. Sometimes it is the spiritual kind, the retreat, the practice, the carefully constructed belief system that explains suffering in a way that keeps you at the center of a meaningful story. The universe is teaching me. Everything happens for a reason. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. These are not always lies. Sometimes they are true. But when they are used as sedatives, when they are deployed specifically to avoid the raw, unmediated experience of what is, actually happen.
The raw, unmediated experience of what is. Preach on.
Happening. They are comfort, dressed in the language of wisdom, selling you the feeling of depth without requiring the descent. Sometimes it is the secular kind, the scrolling, the consuming, the staying busy, the optimization, the productivity system that keeps you moving fast enough that the thing you are not looking at stays in your peripheral vision, rather than your direct line of sight. Motion as avoidance, achievement as anesthetic. Sometimes it is the relational kind, the relationships maintained past their honest expiration because the truth of their ending is more expensive than the comfort of their continuation. The dynamic you stay in because leaving would require admitting what staying has cost you. The person you perform okayness for because their concern would collapse you. Sometimes it is the internal kind. The story itself, the recursive loop, the version of events that you have told so many times it has calcified into something that feels like memory, but is actually mythology, the explanation for why you are the way you are, that is detailed enough to feel like self-knowledge, but is actually a sophisticated defense against it. All of it is comfort. All of it is purchased with the same currency, clarity you could have had instead. Here is the transaction laid bare. Every time you choose the comfortable version of a story over the true version, you are making a payment. The currency is not money. The currency is the capacity to see. Each payment is small, manageable. The ego is expert at making the payments feel reasonable. It is just this once. I will look at it later. I am not ready yet. This is not the right time. But the payments accumulate. And what accumulates on the other side of the ledger is not peace. The same patterns cycling with increasing intensity. The same wounds, opening in different relationships. The same catastrophes arriving in different costumes. The universe, which is not cruel but is absolutely relentless, sending the lesson in progressively louder formats because the quieter versions were absorbed into the comfort budget without being examined. This is what your Sifu meant. You suffer because you want to, not because you enjoy pain, because you are choosing the suffering of the loop over the suffering of the truth, because the suffering you know feels safer than the suffering of not knowing who you are without the story. The loop is expensive. It is just a familiar expense. Truth is expensive too. It is just a one-time cost.
One-time cost. It's kind of depressing.
Now here is the part that requires precision because it is easy to misread. Not everyone can afford truth at every moment. This is real. This is not weakness. This is resource availability. There are moments when the structure of a life genuinely cannot survive the truth landing. When the relationships, the identity, the psychological architecture are so over-leveraged that, without the resources to rebuild, in those moments comfort is not cowardice. It is triage. The problem is not buying comfort when you genuinely need it. The problem is never building the capacity to afford something better. The problem is treating the temporary measure as the permanent condition. The problem is mistaking the bandage for the healing. Because the wound keeps working underneath the bandage, quietly, patiently, with nowhere else to go. And every month the bandage stays on, the wound gets more complicated, and the truth gets more expensive, and the comfort budget has to expand to cover the larger territory of what is not being looked at. Until one day the cost of maintaining the comfort exceeds the cost of the truth it was protecting you from. That is usually when people arrive at the ashes. Not because they chose to, because they ran out of comfort budget. The Jinsu question, the one that actually matters, is not whether you are buying comfort. Everyone is buying some comfort. The fully unmediated human experience is not survivable at every moment. Some filtration is necessary.
The fully unmediated human experience is not survivable at every moment. Ain't that the fucking truth? Ain't that the fucking truth? If we took everything in, unfiltered, 24/7, we'd all be dead. We have to lie to ourselves sometimes, a little bit, right?
Some narrative is necessary. The self is not entirely illusion. It is a functional architecture for navigating a physical world. The Ginsu question is, what specific truth is this specific comfort protecting you from? Not in the abstract, specifically. What is the thing you can see in your peripheral vision that you have been successfully not looking at directly? What is the loop you can feel running that you have been attributing to bad luck or difficult circumstances or the failures of other people? What is the story you have been telling about your suffering that is sophisticated enough to feel like self-knowledge but is actually preventing it? That specific thing. That is what the comfort is costing you. Truth does not require you to burn everything down. That is a misunderstanding of what the blade is for.
The blade is a reference to Ginsu Buddhism. It happens a lot.
The blade is not for destruction, it is for precision. It finds the specific fiction, the load-bearing lie, the story that everything else is organized around. And it cuts that, cleanly, so you can see what was underneath it. What is underneath is almost never as catastrophic as the comfort was protecting you from. The ego threat models truth as annihilation. The actual experience of truth is usually closer to, oh, that is what has been happening, followed by grief, real grief, for the time spent in the loop, for the things the loop cost, for the version of yourself that kept the comfort running at such expense, and then something else, something that does not have a good name in the Western vocabulary. The specific kind of clarity that only exists on the other side of having looked at something directly. Not peace, exactly. More like the silence after a very loud noise finally stops. Comfort is what you buy when you cannot afford truth. Start building the capacity to afford it. Not all at once, not by burning everything down. One small death at a time. One loop examined. One story held up to the light and asked, is this actually true or is this just familiar? The carpet is already bleeding. The comfort budget is already running low. Truth was always going to be cheaper in the long run. SB1 V sets